There we go. It kind of a different lesson this morning, a little bit different for me. Something's been on my mind all week, a certain passage in the Bible, and so we're just kind of going to get in that passage and wallow around in there a little bit today. The idea of highs and lows in life are inevitable. We reach these peaks in our life, mountaintop experiences, people like to call it. This is a mountaintop experience for you guys today. First day, you know what I thought when I looked at Carson? I thought he's got that dazed look on his face I had first day I brought Shannon to church. But anyway, it'll be better. But we have those mountaintop days, which are wonderful, and we have those days that are awful, beyond awful. If you've ever had those in your life, and if you live long enough, I'm sure that you will. There are days that you just, they're just the worst days ever. I'll just put it that way. They're days you just make it through it. You just breathe in and breathe out till the next day comes, and you try to get better, because some things in life, there's just not a fix for some things in life. And, I think this passage of the Bible exemplifies those two extremes of existence, and exemplify those extremes of existence within the life of Jesus. And I think that it's a passage that has always spoke to me on many levels, and I hope to share a little bit of that with you this morning. I don't think I can share all this passage means to me this morning. I just don't think I'm capable. But I will do the best I can to maybe give you some things to think about in your life. It all starts on a mountain. Doesn't life start, the best times of life in this Bible are on mountaintops, right? Moses goes to the top of the mountain. I don't know why that is. I don't know why the Bible never says good things happen in valleys, because I guess maybe good things never happen in valleys. I'm not 100% sure about that. But this story starts on a mountaintop. And it's a time that Jesus takes these closest to him, these inner circle we call it, Peter, James, and John, and he brings them up on a high mountain. And I've studied this a lot in my life, and I've read a lot of historical literature and Roman literature about this event, and believe it or not, this probably happened at night. And I don't know if you ever really thought about that before, but this probably happened at night. And he takes them up on this very high mountaintop, and he was transfigured before them. And this word transfigured in the Greek, it's that same idea of transformation. That same idea was he became something different. That it's not just like he got white or he had a glow about him or a halo around his head, as medieval art often depicts. He transformed into something. He became something different. He transfigured. And they saw that happen. And it's an amazing thought within itself that he does it. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 15, he says that we'll all be changed, that there's a heavenly body and an earthly body. And the earthly can't take the heavenly. And Paul tells us that we'll all be changed. Isn't that what he says? He says, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. We'll all be changed. In the moment of the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, we'll be raised incorruptible. And I don't exactly know what that means, but it means that however our resurrected body is not going to be this body. It's going to be different than this. Now, maybe we can recognize it, I don't know. But it's going to be different. We're going to change. And Paul goes on to say that even if we're alive when the Lord comes again, that when our body, our living bodies, we're going to be alive, is raised, we'll be transfigured. We're going to be transformed into something different. And Jesus, in this particular instance, he's transfigured into something else, and these guys are there to see it. And I often think, what was going on? His garments became radiant and exceedingly white, so it was no longer on earth can whiten them. White wasn't a color they used in Jesus' time. For the same reason I don't ever wear white. I always get it dirty. Right? White wasn't a color they used because it was a dirty world. It was a world of dirt. You didn't wear white. And this was whiter than any launderer could launder them. He was radiant. It was transfigured. It was like anything that you can't describe. It's almost a John type revelation where it's such a thing that you can't really even use. There's not a word. There's not a word to describe it. So all you can say is it's whiter than you can make white. Because you can't describe what's going on here. It's so powerful and it's so magnificent and it's so unbelievable that you can't describe it. It's an indescribable event. And we don't know how it was transfigured because maybe you couldn't even really a description of that. And then Elijah appeared. Now I don't know how they knew it was Elijah. Elijah was a wild man. I guess they would have recognized him, right? Elijah appeared. And I guess we all have a picture of what Elijah might look like. I don't know that Elijah was transfigured, and Moses comes along. And if you remember, Jesus says, I didn't come to abolish the law and the prophets, right? He said, I came to fulfill it. Came to fulfill it. And so here we have the law and the prophets embodied. Elijah is the prophet Elijah. There's no more powerful prophet in the Bible than the prophet Elijah. And there's no greater lawgiver than Moses. And Jesus said, I didn't come to abolish the law and the prophets. I came to fulfill the law and the prophets. I came to embody them. I came to fulfill the intent of the passage. And so the law and the prophets appear with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration, and the apostles are there to see it. And the apostles are there to witness it. And Peter doesn't, and it has to be Peter, doesn't it? It has to be Peter that speaks up, because Peter is always speaking up. Do you ever think Jesus just looked at Peter and said, Peter, just be quiet for a minute? Right? Because Peter always has to say something. Everybody else is in amazement, and Peter's like, I need to say something. Right? And so Peter says, and he calls him Rabbi, which is really interesting in the passage. He doesn't call him Lord. He doesn't call him Master, which a lot of times would be the reference here. But he calls him Rabbi, which really means like esteemed teacher. And I think there's probably something within that, and I haven't really totally been able to grasp it, but for some reason he used that terminology. But I think it was the awe-inspiring event, and the fact that Elijah and Moses was there and Jesus was there, and I think it was so awe-inspiring. I don't know if he thought to call him Lord. I think he just says Rabbi, and he says, Rabbi, he says it's good for us to be here. He says, let us make 3 tabernacles. And that really means like booths, or dwelling places. Now the Jews had the Feast of Booths, where they'd go up on the roof, and they'd make these booths, and they'd stay in them. And so maybe that's kind of the reference here. But he says, let us make 3, basically these 3 dwelling places for you and Moses and Elijah. He says, let us make these 3 tabernacles here. But Peter didn't know what to say. Sometimes when you don't know what to say, you just shouldn't say anything. But that's not Peter, right? That's not Rex most of the time. And so Peter says it, and Peter's like, let's do this. And yet he's missing the whole point of what's going on here, because they were terrified. You know, I think that would be a scary, and I think this is at night. I really do. I've studied this out. I believe this happened at night. So it's not just like this is the daytime and the sun's shining and this radiant thing. This is like the middle of the night. And then this magical transformation occurs, and Moses and Elijah's there, and this radiant light. And, you know, John says Jesus is light, and all these things are going on, and they're terrified. They're afraid. Can you imagine? This isn't a day of lights. You know, this isn't a world of light, is it? This is ancient world. I mean, this isn't like we live in today. Light just doesn't happen, right? It's amazing. It's terrifying. It's a terrifying event. What's going on? Is this the end, or what's happening? We don't even know what's going on. And then Jesus, and then God speaks, and it's one of those places in the Bible where you get this God voice, because you only get this at the baptism. And if you remember right, at the baptism of Christ, he says, this is my beloved Son. Beloved. Beloved. What a word, beloved, in the Bible. It's the same word Abraham talks about Isaac. Beloved son, the loved son. Same word you see in John, the idea of God beloving Christ, the love he has for him, this beloved idea. And he says, and it's the same thing he says at the baptism. He says, this is my son, right, whom I love. But listen to what he says here. He says, listen to him. In other words, you've got the prophet here in Elijah, you've got the law here in Moses, and you've listened to that law, and you've listened to that prophet your entire life. But now God is saying to you, God's speaking to you, and he says, listen to Christ. Because he's fulfilled the law, and he's fulfilled the prophets. And we talk about the Old Testament being nailed to the cross and the old law. We probably misuse that passage terribly. But what a powerful passage this is on that. Don't listen to the law anymore. Don't listen to the prophets anymore because they've been fulfilled in Jesus. Listen to Christ. He's my son. He's who I love. He has the authority. I didn't bring Moses and Elijah here so you could worship them. I brought Moses and Elijah here so I could show you that their time is past. And what a mountaintop experience. What a time for Christ. Don't you know Jesus, the human side of Jesus? Because Jesus was human, right? He was God in the flesh. And the human side of Jesus, to be able to be transformed before these closest to him and to reveal himself to them and say, this is who I really am. Man, I can't imagine. I can't imagine what was in his mind. I can't imagine what an experience that would be to be able to finally say, we're almost to the end of Jesus' life here. We're almost to the end. We're almost to the cross. They've been with him for 3 years now. And he never has been able to really reveal himself to them. And to be able to take those closest friends to him and say, this is who I really am. Look at me. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what that would be like for Jesus? We don't think of that much, do we? We think about what it was like for Peter and James and John. But we don't think of what it was like for Jesus. Literally close to the cross. To be able to do this in front of those closest to him. Amazing. It was amazing. And it was this mountaintop experience like there was none other. It's one of those times in your life that it's never going to happen again. But with every mountaintop experience in life, there's a valley waiting for you. Isn't that depressing? Isn't that depressing? But it's true, isn't it? Nobody stays on the mountain forever, right? And most of the time, the great experiences within our life, they're fleeting at best. Nobody stays on the mountain forever. And have you ever had one of those days in your life, like everything's going your way, and you think, okay, now what's going to go wrong? Right? You ever have those days? I have those days all the time in my life. I call Susie. I've said things are going way too good. Something's going to happen. Things don't ever go this good in my life, right? Something's going to happen. And inevitably, something happens, right? Because that's the life of Rex. I don't know if it's your life or not, but it's the life of Rex. And so when that happens, I always know when I'm having a really good day and I'm having a really good time or something really great happens in my life, it's like I can't really enjoy it like I should because my mind is going, oh, now what's going to happen? Right? Now what's going to happen? What's next? Right? The phone's going to ring, something's going to happen, something's going to go wrong. But for that instant, it's perfect. For that instant, it's wonderful. For that instant, it's great. Did you ever see that movie? A River Runs Through It? I actually got it, Bill, this time. A River, Bill always laughs at me because I never can really name movies when I use them as parallels. But you ever see that movie, A River Runs Through It? And his brother's the mess up, he's always in trouble and he's on all this booze and all. He's going to have a bad end, right? But he's in the river and he's catching that fish and he's like going down the river and he's reeling and there's this huge fish and he finally catches that fish. And it was Ron Howard, right, that was in that movie. And he goes, and he's like narrating it. And he said, for one instant, he was perfect. And that's always stuck in my mind. For one instant, he was perfect. You know, there's times in your life that are perfect. Just cherish them and keep them in your mind, because those times are fleeting and they're few. But there's instances in your life where things are perfect. The world's perfect. On the day of Pentecost, when 3,000 were baptized, I've often told this for an instant. The church was perfect. I'm sure it wasn't long. Are you? Before somebody had a gripe or a complaint or something was wrong? But for one instant, church was exactly how God envisioned it. It was perfect. This was perfect. But with every mountain, you got to come down, don't you? They looked around, and it was gone. In an instant, it was gone. They were coming down. You gave them orders. You just seen the most fantastic thing you're ever going to see in your life, but just don't tell anybody. Right? I mean, why is life like that? You know, it's like when somebody comes up to you and says, I'm going to tell you something, you're not going to believe it, but you can't tell anybody. Just don't tell me. You know? He says, until the Son of Man arose from the dead, they seized upon that statement, discussing with one another what rising from the dead meant. You see, they're coming down fast off the mountain. Rising from the dead, what does that mean? You can't rise from the dead unless you die. What does it mean that you're going to die? We don't understand this. We don't understand the statement. We don't understand what's going on. Why is it that scribes say Elijah must come first? We're looking at the book of Malachi. It says in Malachi, Elijah must come first. Jesus said that John the Baptist was Elijah who was to come. They're saying, why are we? So they're putting this in front of him. Elijah's got to come and restore all things. And yet, how is it written, the Son of Man, that he will suffer many things, be treated with contempt? How does it work? We don't understand. Everything was so perfect a second ago. And now we're confused, and now we don't understand. And we don't understand about you suffering and dying and rising from the dead, and that means you have to die, and we don't understand. And isn't Elijah supposed to come first? And has he came? And are you really him? And what did we just see? And we're getting very confused coming down from the mountain because we don't understand now what's going on. And he says, I say to you, Elijah has indeed come. And they did to him whatever they wished, just as it is written, because he said John the Baptist is the Elijah that was to come, and John was beheaded, and they did to him just as they wished. And the apostles are getting more and more confused as they go down the mountain, and the vision and the mountaintop experience of good that they had is fading from their mind, as it does with us, because the problems of the world are coming into our head, and now we don't understand, and it's not as clear as it once was. You ever have one of those dreams? I have dreams at night. Y'all dream at night? Do you ever have a dream that's kind of weird? And when you're dreaming it, it makes 100% sense, right? And then your wife asks you what you're dreaming, and you start explaining it, and you realize it's just a bunch of hogwash. It doesn't make any sense at all. But 3 minutes ago, it was perfect. When I was still asleep, it made perfect sense. But once I started waking up, it doesn't make any sense anymore. You ever have those dreams? Am I the only person in here that's that weird? I'm telling you, I'm a special ed case, right? And so it doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, and I'm trying to tell Susie what the dream's about, and I get into it a little bit, and I'm like, I'll just forget it. It doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't understand it anyway, right? It doesn't make any sense. Well, this is how these guys are. It was all perfect. It made perfect sense. Moses and Elijah's there. God, hear my son. Everything's good. Coming down from the mountain, guess what? Things don't make sense anymore, and it's just going to get worse, because that's how valleys work. They suck you into them, So they're going down off of here, and it's getting worse and worse as they go down. They're a little confused, but there's more waiting at the bottom of the hill. So they're going down the mountain, and they're going to hit the deepest valley. You see why I love this passage? They're going to hit the deepest valley. They came back, the disciples, a large crowd around them, scribes arguing. See, isn't that life? Isn't that exactly life? Isn't that exactly what life is? Everything goes good. You got it all figured out. Things are going your way. And then guess what? You step back into your world, and guess what? It's all there, just like you left it. And all these problems are there, and all these people are there, and all this griping's there, and all these things are going on. You step right back into it. Jesus stepped out of that for a minute, and it was perfect. And then he steps back in, and guess what? He walked back into the same thing it always is. The scribes are arguing. Things are going bad. Nobody's listening. Nobody's paying attention. Everything's bad. Jesus steps back into the valley, right? Doesn't he? And this is a deep valley. Because Jesus is literally hours from the cross, days from the cross. And he expects these apostles to be able to do what they need to do. And he leaves them alone, and guess what? They fail. I mean, how worse does it get? How much worse can it get? I've had these guys with me. They've been my apostles for a year and a half. I've given them everything they need to know. I leave them down here, and guess what? They can't even get along without me. They can't get along without me for just a night. I come back, and everything's falling apart. And I'm going to die. And then what's going to happen? They're really going to fall apart. I mean, if they can't get along with a few hours while I'm still on the earth, what's going to happen when I'm not on the earth anymore? You see? That's the valley. And in Jesus' mind, he's frustrated with this. He's frustrated with them. What are they doing? Why can't you do this? I leave you alone for just a little bit, and I come down, and it's a mess. And everybody comes running to Jesus because he's the fixer guy. He'll fix it. And Jesus in his mind's thinking, I'm not going to be there to fix it anymore. You see how deep this valley is? And they were amazed. They began running to greet him. And that's a passage that's always worked on my head. Because I never have figured out if they were just amazed because it was Jesus and that was just amazing. Or if they were like extra amazed because maybe like Moses, he was shining or something. I mean, I don't know. They were amazed. When Moses came down from the mount with the law, well, you've all seen Charlton Heston, right? We all know what he looks like when he comes down, right? You know? I mean, Moses was shining. He was radiant. Was Jesus radiant? I don't know. They were amazed. Now, I don't know why. And they were running to greet him. And he says, what are you discussing with them? One of the crowd answered him, Teacher, I brought you my son possessed with a spirit which makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it slams him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, stiffens out. I told your disciples to cast it out, and they couldn't do it. You know, I would love to tell you what all this passage means to me, but I don't think I can do it. When you train people and you teach them and you try to make them understand and try to make them get along on their own, whether it's your employees or your children or a coworker or anybody in your life, and you try to get them where they can do something, and you show up and they can't do it. And at that point, in your mind, you're thinking, what have I done wrong? Right? What have I messed up? You know, Jesus is the master teacher, the rabbi. You know what that means, master? I said that meant something. He's the master teacher, Peter calls him. And when the guy comes, what does he call him? He says, Teacher, I brought you my son. There's no accident. Those words are in this. Because Jesus in his mind is thinking, if I'm the master teacher, if I'm the master rabbi, if I'm the teacher, then what have I done wrong? What have I failed at? Why can't you do this? What's happened? I don't know that we can adequately understand at this point the aggravation and the disappointment that's in the mind of Christ. He's disappointed in them. And I don't think how would it be for Jesus to be disappointed in you? We always say we want him to be happy. He's disappointed in them. Why can't you do that? I've taught you. You've been with me. You've seen this. You've done this. I've sent you out. There was a limited commission. There was all these things that you've done, and yet here you are, and you're lost. You ever look at this passage this way before? This always just speaks to me. And he says, "Oh, unbelieving generation." I mean, I don't know if you can feel the disappointment in Jesus right here? We read words on a page, and they're just words on a page. But I hope by this time in this narrative, you've come to the idea of where Jesus is, and I hope you can understand his state of mind. Oh, unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Can you see it? Have you ever been that way with somebody? Have you ever felt that way towards somebody? Where they disappointed you to the point, and they didn't learn to the point, and they disappointed you over and over, and finally you said, how long am I going to put up with you? We shouldn't be that way, but have you ever done that? Have you ever done that with your children or somebody else in your life, and you said, I'm just done? Right? How long am I going to put up with this? You're unbelieving, you're unresponding, you're unteachable. Why can't I make you see? Why can't I make you understand? Why do you not get what we're going for here? Can you see in Jesus? Can you see it in his voice? Can you see the expression in his face as he looks at them and he talks to them? Can you see the emotion? And I love the exclamation point, the frustration. Man, I've been there so many times in my life. Well, bring it to me. Right? You ever done that? Just get out of my way and let me do it. Right? You ever done that in your life with somebody? It gets to that point and you're like, just get out of my way. That's where Jesus was. I'm not going to teach you. I'm not going to help you through it. I'm not going to hold your hand. Just bring him here. Frustrated, aggravated, disappointed. He's in the valley. You don't think Jesus had valleys? He's in the valley. And he says, how long has this been happening to him? And he said, from childhood, it has often thrown him both to the fire and the water. And then, if Jesus wasn't in a bad enough place at this point in the narrative, the man's father says, but if you can do anything. Jesus has been Jesus for 3 years now. He's fed the multitude. The blind have had sight. The poor have had the gospel preached to them. The lame have walked. The deaf hear. Demons have been cast out. If you can do it. If. There's not a bigger word in the dictionary than that, is there? If. If you can. Oh! Do you understand where Jesus is about now? He's about ready to just vamoose the whole batch, right? I mean, he's had it. He's red in the face. Do you think Jesus ever gets red in the face? At this particular minute, Jesus is red in his face. If you can do it. I was Jesus. The indignation, right? Even Jesus says it. Even in the text, it says it. If you can. If you can. At this point, if I'm Jesus, I leave. Right? I just leave. I just walk off. I just turn around and walk away. And I go back up on top of that mountain where people understand me. Right? And Jesus makes a statement. He says, all things are possible to him who believes. And this story gets better. All things are possible to him who believes. And then he says a statement in the Bible that's the most powerful passage in the whole Bible, I think. The most powerful passage in the whole Bible. He says, I do believe. Help my unbelief. It's the cry of every person who ever followed Christ. I promise you. If it's not, call me a liar. Call me a liar if I'm wrong. It's the call of every Christian. The call of every person who ever followed Jesus. I do believe. Help my unbelief. Help me to understand, Lord, when bad things happen. Help me to understand when people die. Help me to understand, Lord. Give me faith. Help me to understand when people around me are prospering and I'm not. Help me, Lord. Am I worse than they are? Help me to understand. Help me to understand. I do believe, Lord, but help my unbelief. I don't understand this world. I don't understand people. I don't understand what's going on around me. I don't understand how some people can get blessed with so much and I cannot be blessed with so much. I don't understand how people can be blessed with health and I'm cursed with sickness. I don't understand, Lord. I don't understand how people around me are suffering and I'm blessed. I don't understand when I'm blessed. I don't understand when I'm suffering and people around me are blessed. I don't understand how the world works. I don't understand sometimes how you work, God. I do believe. I believe with all my heart. But help my unbelief. Show me you. Show me how the world works. Because I don't understand. It's my only son, Lord. My only son. Some people have a lot of children. But I only have one. Why is my only son sick? When other people who have a lot of sons, they're all well. Why, Lord? I do believe. But help me with my unbelief. You ever been in the valley? Have you ever been in the valley? Well, when you're in the valley, you ask a lot of questions. A lot of questions. Why me? You have to. Because we're humans. And in our mind, in your mind, in my mind, the whole world revolves around cause and effect, doesn't it? Somebody gets cancer. What did they do? Well, they were a smoker. All that explains it. This person just gets cancer, and what do they do? Nothing. You and I, we can't wrap our head around that, can we? Because in our mind, there has to be cause and effect. For something to happen, something had to happen. Cause and effect. That's how we work. Can't change that. Can't take it out of your being. It's who we are. So if my boy is tormented, what did I do? He took him by the hand, he raised him up. His disciples began questioning him, how could we drive it out? And he said to them, that kind cannot come out by anything but prayer. I want to end this morning. I've gone long. I'm sorry. I've gone long. This means a lot to me, this passage. I want to end with the 23rd Psalm, and I want you to think about this psalm in light of what we've just talked about. I want you to think about David and David's valleys, Bathsheba, numbering Israel, the valleys David went through. And I want you to think about your valleys in your life, and I want you to think about the questions in your life, and I want you to think about your mountaintop experiences in your life, and I want you to read this psalm like you know this stuff, and not read it like you've read it 500,000 times on the back of a funeral brochure, because that's how we know the 23rd Psalm, right? In the 23rd Psalm, David says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. I want you to listen to this next part. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Does this passage mean more to you now than it did 30 minutes ago. You see, God says, you're going to run a lot of valleys. And valleys are deep and dark and scary. And David never said, God is not going to make me go through the valley. Because he is going to make you go through the valley. But what David said is that even in the valley, you're with me. Your rod and your staff. And that means something to a shepherd. The rod was your protection. That's what you beat things away with. Your staff was what you would reach out and grab the sheep and carry them back. So he's saying your rod of protection and your staff of love are with me, even in the valley, even in the deepest valley. They're with me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There's some things in life we're never going to understand. There's some things in life that are never going to make sense. I don't care how much you try to figure it out. It just doesn't. There's times in life where you question God. You question his love for you, his ability to provide for you. You struggle with all those things that we all struggle with because we're all human and we all go through those things. But I want to tell you, God never leaves you. He never forsakes you. And in the end, God's going to make everything right, whatever that is. Don't let the darkness engulf you. Don't let the valley swallow you up, because it will. You'll lose yourself down there in the dark without God. You will. Your mind will torment you and you'll lose yourself. God is a light. God is light. God is our staff. God is our comfort. God's what brings us out of the valley. He's the only thing that can bring us out of the valleys of our life. And if you have him and he's yours, then he will see you through it. Even the darkest days, he will see you through it if you never forsake him, because he'll never forsake you. We're never going to understand, and we're not ever meant to understand. Because faith isn't always about knowing. Faith is about believing that regardless of what happens, we know who drives the bus and God's going to take care of us. Faith is not in the things we can see. Faith is in the things we cannot see. And if I leave you with one thing this morning, I will leave you with this. Look at this passage and study it. And when you go through the valleys in your life, believe and have faith in what you cannot see. Have faith in Jesus Christ and his love for you and his providence for you, and the fact that he will never leave you and he will never desert you. Don't get lost in the valley. Don't get lost in the darkness. Jesus is a way out. I promise you. Because I've been in the valley in my life more than once. I promise you, Jesus is the way out. If we can help you this morning, won't you let it be